Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 302nd meeting since we started in February 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give them an hour to make a presentation, up to an hour that is. And if anyone interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter we listen only one fool at a time. It's one of our rules. Then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everyone in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium here to respond to the speaker said for or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speaker, we have time for announcements. Does anybody has any announcements they want to make? Now's the time to do it. Anyone have an announcement they want to make? Any announcement? Sky is falling, all right. Anything else?
The end of the world was announced for today.
The end of the world was announced for today? Yeah, I didn't know that. End of the world? Wow.
Who announced it?
Who announced it?
John sent me an email. Who announced the end of the world?
I don't know, but I was counseling some friends who didn't get raptured up. So
I got an email. The end of the world.
End of the world, huh? Anyway, next week, September 30th, we have Dr. Robert Edmondson. He's going to talk about how families can suffer fewer losses as a result of heart disease. It's on your itinerary. I'm not going to read all this. On October 7th, on the human body as a machine or garden, Diane Lee, PhD, is anthropology. She will be discussing that, and that is on the itinerary. You can read it. October 14th, it's in progress. I'm waiting for Calvin Bluette to send me a blurb on what's going to be. He's going to be the speaker. October 21st, Jim Love will be talking about decline. That's on the itinerary also. November 4th, will there be a global economic collapse? George Lujak, author of, he'll be talking. That's on it's on the itinerary also. There's a page 3, but I didn't print it. You have to go on the internet to see it. And hold on.
The heist, yes.
On page 3 on the internet, you'll find the heist, how corporations hijacked America. That's November 11th. So that ought to be interesting also. That's with, who is that? A congressional candidate, Roland Rangel. He's the speaker that day.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that's it for our itinerary, what's coming up. Our next open date for a speaker, in case you're interested, is October 28th, followed by November 18th, and then we're into Thanksgiving, which we won't be here, and we're going to run out of year pretty soon. Anyway, our speaker tonight is Ken Fawcett. He's an author, TV videographer, radio and print journalist, and an IT professional tasked to Guam in 2002 to bring the only grocery department store on the civilian side of the island back online. Ken will discuss the ramifications of Super Typhoon Pongsona, if I said it right, that had engulfed Guam at this time. He will show a storm that had sustained winds of 185 miles per hour for 12 hours. The destruction was immense. The media was told that they could not report it because of our deployment of troops in Iraq. Ken argues this was not a media cover-up, rather it was a media cooperation, which is what they do 90% of the time. He contends that the media regularly and consistently sacrifices their duty to the people to report the news for their continued access to the government pipeline of information. And for the sake of their place on the table, they have thrown the public under the bus. Ken will further argue that the media has lost all integrity at the higher levels, while their minions below accept the pabulum agenda fed them, believing that in their hearts they are providing the news. He will also relate his experience as a sole civilian IT professional with fiber-optic skills on the island. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Ken Fawcett.
Thank you, Tom. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Let me just say that, where's that paper you were reading from?
Right here.
I don't agree totally with part of it. So the media was told they couldn't cover it. Okay, yeah, that's true. But it says the media regularly sacrifices their duty to the people to report the news. I don't agree with that because they don't have any duty to report the news to you. Where is that in the Constitution? Or where is the law that says the media has to report anything to you? I mean, do they? Really?
It's their duty in exchange for us allowing them to.
I mean, the First Amendment is protecting people's right to free speech, and in the days that it was written, I believe it was to protect people like Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, that were using the media of the time, which was a newspaper, to report atrocities that the sitting government was committing, correct? So they sought to build protection in, but they never foresaw an electronic nation where you have this television and radio and all this other internet even, and every single thing, the media that we call the media, the television, the radio, all of it's driven by money. It's all capitalist. But there's nothing that says they have to tell you anything. So that's the only, I just wanted to clear that up. Does that make a difference? I think it's...
That's what you wrote.
Well, not really. He wrote it. He wrote it real quickly, and then, anyway. Here I am. In 2002, if you remember, around Christmas time, we were getting ready to go into Iraq and get rid of Saddam Hussein. That he had weapons of mass destruction, right? Bush had been talking about it for months, and Rumsfeld and all of them. So in December, actually on December the 8th of 2002, a Super Typhoon hit Guam. And Guam has Anderson Air Force Base. It's our deployment point for any Mideast operation. Well, there were 35,000 troops that had already staged in Guam whenever that typhoon hit, and it wiped out Anderson. I mean, you're going to see slides of the damage. It makes everything you've seen on television here in the States look like a whirlwind, like a dust devil, what happened there. And they basically said, we wanted to wipe out Saddam in January of 2003. However, since there's no power on the island, the Air Force Base is completely debilitated. It delayed them for 2 months. And I got to thinking, back in the feudal days, you know, where kings and queens and princes, say old England, if the king amassed his troops to invade a territory and a storm like this were to hit, he'd take it as a sign from God.
Yeah.
You know, let's just forget it. And they would. They did things like that back then. If a storm like that crippled his troops while they were massed at the border, they would just take it as a sign from God that this is not right. Well, we didn't do that. We went ahead with the thing, as you know, but the whole deal, my trip started on a 777. My company got a call from Kmart headquarters, and they said, there's been a very bad storm in Guam, and Guam is Kmart's #1 store. That store does $1 million gross per day. $1 million gross per day. It is the only grocery department store on the civilian side of the island, but it also gets a lot of military people who come over there and shop. So they said I had to go. I had been working with Kmart for about 3 years at that point, and they put me on a plane. The problem was it was right at Christmas, and a lot of people travel at Christmas, and I had to go through Hawaii because I didn't have a passport, so I couldn't go through Tokyo. So I had to go to Hawaii, and a lot of people apparently go to Hawaii for Christmas. Everything was booked except first class. They paid $9,000 one way for me to go to Guam, because the only thing left on that 777 there was first class. Well, you haven't traveled until you travel first class international on a 777. The bed is leather. I say bed, it was a seat. It's this wide, and it lays completely flat. You can sleep on your stomach, you can sleep on your side. We got five five-course meals while I was on the plane. It's a 20-hour flight, so that's in Hawaii when we had to stop and let people off, and some more people got on. And I was on that same plane. I decided to take a picture of it. It was the biggest plane I'd ever been on at that point. And funny thing about it, I remember this is 2002 in December. They gave us our meals in first class with real silverware. I mean, we had a metal knife, we had a metal fork. I mean, it was wine glasses were real glass. I mean, it was like 9/11 never happened, you know, because I had flown a lot domestically. And after 9/11, they quit giving you, even in business class, they quit giving you metal utensils, which is kind of a bummer. But the meals were great. I don't have any objections to the flight. It was awesome. When I get to Guam, though, I realized what I was there to do. This is a picture I took with my telephone. And when we landed on the tarmac in Guam, I took that picture looking through the window of the plane. This is what I saw. Guam is an island, as you know, and they don't get tanker trucks for gasoline. They have these great big ships come and fill these tanks up. All four of them eventually caught fire, and it was burning when I landed. We get to the airport, and we had to walk there was no thing to come out and, you know, you couldn't walk like you do at DFW down that ramp. They had them, but there was no power. The airport was completely dark. So we had to get off the plane with stairs, like you see the president doing, and then walk to the actual terminal, up some more stairs. There was guys with flashlights leading us through the airport, and it smelled horrible because there was no power and no air, and there had been like water this deep in the airport. And so it was starting to like mildew and stuff. It smelled awful. This is looking out from the roof of my hotel, which they put me at the Hilton on the beach, which normally you would think that's wow. But I was on the 6th floor, guys, and there had been this much water in my room. So it smelled just like the airport, you know, that pungent smell. And when you're laying there trying to sleep at night, it's like, I'm getting sick. Right? I mean, it makes your throat hurt. Well, the water didn't get that high from the ocean, obviously, but what it was, they had up to 250 mile an hour winds that were blowing in from the ocean. All of the trees that you see there should have leaves on them. There was not a single leaf on a single tree on the entire island. But what happened was this storm is blowing so hard it bowed in all of the sliding doors on the ocean side of that hotel, and water, they said, just poured in through those sliding glass doors. Didn't break them, but they said it was cascading down the hallway and down the stairs like a waterfall at the height of the storm. So they tried to dry it out. They put all the Japanese tourists on the other side of the hotel, which didn't get wet, the side that you would normally not want to be on if you're a tourist, because Christmas is basically the tourist season for Japan. And I was there with a bunch of Red Cross people, and they said whenever you see Japanese tourists getting on the elevator, if there's not enough room, we have to get off. The rescue workers and the people like me, we need to get off and the hotel was right to do that because these people are paying for the rooms and we weren't. So we did that for them. But I can imagine you book your vacation, it'd be like going to Cancun after a major hurricane. But what are you going to do? You still go, right? Whoops, what was that? This is another picture looking out across the bay. Guam would be a very beautiful place to visit any other time, but as you can see, all those trees over on the other side and even on this side are missing greenery, and this is in the tropics. It's a paradise normally. This is just looking out across the bay, and I took pictures of it because there's two cliffs. There's this one, and it's not showing up real well. It's too bright, but if you look out across the bay on this computer, you'll see what I'm talking about. It gives it a 3D effect, and I've been to Cancun and Acapulco, but as far as just natural beauty, I think Guam has both of those places beat. This was a beach house, and as you can see, there's nothing left except for the bathtub and the poles that I guess held up the walls. This is a bicycle that the store, the Kmart store I was working at, I retrieved it out of the trash to get to and from the store, which I need to go back and tell you what happened after I got my luggage, which, by the way, they were pushing the luggage by hand down that belt. Everything had to be done by hand, no electricity. I got my bags, 2 big bags, which one of them was full of tools, and I went to the rent car counter. And there was one girl at the counter, a local, and she says, "Hi fi, that means hello and goodbye in Guam talk. I learned that while I was over there. Everybody says hi fi Ida every time they see you. So I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I need to get a car." She said, "Well, I'm sorry, there are no cars." She said, the entire island is without gasoline. We don't have any gasoline, and all of the gas stations were destroyed anyway, even if we had gasoline. And so I'm like very disappointed. I've flown all the way from the United States, and I'm up on the top of this mountain basically where the airport is, and when we were flying in, I could see the Kmart way down there, kind of halfway between the top of the mountain where the airport is and down, but halfway between the airport and the beach is Kmart. So I'm like, well, darn, how am I going to get to the store? And the little girl says, "What store?" I said, "Kmart." And she goes, "Oh, you're the guy that came from the United States to fix Kmart?" I said, "I guess so." She says, and she pulled that thing down to close the booth, and she says, "I'll take you to the store." And she did. She said, "We have to have that store. Our water," they had no water on the entire island. It was contaminated with sewage. And I didn't know that until the last day I was there, which caused a lot of trouble, I'm going to tell you, because I got sick. Anyway, I'll get there. So she takes me to the store and drops me off. By this time it's getting dark, and I go in and I start assessing the damage. I figured it would take 3 days to get the store open, but they really, there were people outside in the parking lot that were just like camped out there waiting for us to open, because we had over 1 million bottles of water that we could sell once the store is open. And the reason Kmart couldn't open was because the POS systems were down. Oh, this was in the paper, the Guam paper, and that's that same fire from the air that can y'all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. But let me get to the store. This was a sign to show you how hard the wind blew. Those are actually concrete blocks, and they have rebar, really thick rebar, like 3/4 inch rebar, and it just took that sign and broke it in half. You can imagine how much wind it would take. This is a gas station, or what's left of it. There's another sign that didn't quite get totally broke, but it's it's a concrete sign. This is in front of a hotel. Now what you can see here is all the power lines down. These were huge, thick power lines that, I don't know, they're that big around. And I'm walking these streets stepping over these lines everywhere you go. Guam put up these power poles like this. They're typhoon proof in the 80s after they had a bad typhoon, and these are typhoon proof power poles. They're like 4 feet at the base, 4 feet around, and they're made out of concrete and steel. And the steel is rods inside there this big. So they're typhoon proof, right? Well, you're going to see I've got pictures of some that were just snapped off like toothpicks. This is stuff from the hotel across the street. This is the hotel. It blew the walls out of the hotel, a high-rise hotel, and all of the furniture out of the rooms ended up across the street at a shopping center. This was in the Kmart in one of the communications rooms. This is where my job started. I don't know how many of y'all have got any kind of training in communications at all, but these are what we call 66 terminal blocks. This is where the dial tone comes in from the service provider. In this case, it was some Oriental something. I don't remember the name of the company. There's a potential right here for 100 phone lines, but obviously Kmart, even then, was having financial difficulties. They didn't have 100 phone lines. They had a T1, if y'all know what a T1 is. They had a frame relay, and then they had about 12 just regular POTS lines, plain old telephone service. I found one phone line out of all of that was still working on these blocks. Now, all of this equipment, this is the paging system for the store. That's a radio for music on hold and stuff. All of that equipment was underwater and it was underwater for 8 hours. In Guam, the department stores, well, there's only one, and it's Kmart. It's different from here. They can't get a truck every day like all these stores do now. You see Walmart, they're constantly getting trucks, right? In Guam, they get a shipment about once every 6 weeks, and it's a ship, and they unload it. So they have to have enough product in there. And keep in mind, they're selling $1 million worth of product a day in this store. That's a lot of product. So they have to have a big enough warehouse to keep 6 weeks worth of inventory.
$22 million.
Yeah. So what they do, the store is on 3 levels. The first, or the basement level, was the warehouse. So it's the same size. If you can walk into a normal size Walmart here and imagine a warehouse as big as that store floor, that's how big the warehouse is on that Kmart. The first floor is like grocery and stuff, meat, all that. And it had like a few clothing items. The third floor, if you're counting the basement, 1, 2, third floor was everything else, like sporting goods, hardware, all of that. And then on the roof was a parking lot. The roof of the store, instead of just being like tar and gravel, it was actually a parking lot. And they had a parking lot in the front too. It was a busy store. There's more stuff. If you see that silt up on top, this is electronics for the store, and all of that silt is when the water receded, it left this brown, ugly, crappy looking stuff that I didn't know what it was. I was from Galveston and we had hurricanes all the time, so I'm thinking the whole time I'm cleaning all this up and seeing what I can salvage of the electronics, which was nothing, I'm thinking, how did the water get way up here? We're at least 400 feet above sea level. How did seawater get way up here? They said there was 8 feet of seawater, or 8 feet of water. So I'm cleaning up, and a couple of days after I'm working in there, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to use none of this stuff. So I start getting in touch with corporate, and they start shipping FedEx, air, all the electronics to totally rebuild the office and get the POS systems back online. I'm not going to be able to put it down where it was in the office that they had, because that's in the basement, which had 8 feet of water, and it smelled horrible. They had these heater fans, for lack of a better word. It was already near 100 degrees outside, but they had these fans that were blowing like hot air, like a gigantic blow dryer for your hair. I mean, it was just so hot in there, it'd make you sick. And then
Septic tank.
this is in a picture of the warehouse, and you can see it's nasty. That's really nasty. This is the office where the managers and them work, but it's also where we have all the computer servers and things for the POS. Y'all know what POS means, point of sale. That's where all that stuff was. Well, that water level actually was up to here in that room, right there. That's how deep that water was in the office. So really, these people are cleaning up, but there's nothing I'm going to be able to do in that room other than I have to find the fiber optics that's coming in there, and I have to splice it. And what I'm going to do is take it up to the roof, because they had like a, what do they call that? A penthouse, or for the elevator. Is it called a penthouse? Something like that. It's next to the elevator, and it's on the roof. Well, that was dry, and it was air conditioned, so I'm going to use that as the office going forward. This is one of the main POS servers. As you can see, it's full of that brown crud stuff, which next to the last day I was there, I was down here trying to get some cables in this room, and one of the workers said, "Shouldn't you be wearing a mask and gloves?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I've been through a lot of hurricanes. I was born and raised in Galveston, so I know about seawater. It's not going to bother you. And the girl says, "Seawater? This was sewage, raw sewage." So this is the front of Kmart. Can y'all see that back there? It was damaged, but because of the roof having a parking lot instead of actual roof, other than the sign and some shingles, those clay shingles in the front that got blown off, but it was really in pretty good shape inside. So I opened that store 3 days after I got there, and they started selling water and stuff like that. They didn't start selling groceries for another 3 or 4 days, because they had to fly people in from the States to help get all that stuff set back up. But these are power lines that I was telling you about, and those power lines are like huge. You're like, how did those snap? How could they snap? We didn't understand. I've been through a lot of hurricanes. These hurricanes they're showing lately, and they say it's the mother of all hurricanes, CNN, and you see that stupid weatherman guy up there going like this, and you can tell he's faking it. People, I have never seen wind damage like I saw in Guam, and I want to know if anybody here remembers seeing anything about Super Typhoon Pongsona on the news. Anybody?
Nope.
When we left, all of the Red Cross people and the people down there for Kmart, they gave us shirts. This was the shirt. It says, "I survived Super Typhoon Pongsona," and it tells you the sustained winds. I was told by some of the guys that came over to the store from the Air Force Base that their areometer, or whatever you call that thing that measures, what's it called?
Anemometer.
Yeah, that thing. It measures the wind speed. They said it broke, but pegged at 250. So they had gusts at 250 miles an hour. And yet, CNN, none of them, it's because our troops were stranded there and they wouldn't cover it. So who in the heck, my girlfriend at the time, I finally was able to call her 2 days after I got there. She wanted to know what the heck is going on, because I really didn't even have time to tell her I was leaving. That's how quick I had to get over there. And I said, well, there's been a bad storm over here in Guam, and I'm here, and I'm working on it. And she didn't believe me, because there was nothing. She said, I'm watching CNN, and they don't have nothing. I said, well, I don't know why. See, I didn't even know we were going to invade Iraq. That was at Christmas in 2002, and we didn't. Did that do something to
Yeah,
you?
you screwed it up, yeah.
Sorry, guys. I thought it was not working.
Oh, it's working okay. All right, here.
Anyway. Oh, you want to do it? Okay, getting back to Guam. Where was I? Oh, my girlfriend Tina.
She doesn't believe you.
She didn't believe me. And yeah, I did a lot of trips in the States. I went to every state in the United States for Kmart over like a 5-year period, except for Alaska. And she was not I had just met her a couple years before, and she wasn't a very trusting individual. So, but this time, I'm telling you, I was definitely on the level. There was a bad storm. She didn't believe it. Every piece of glass, anything within 2 blocks of the ocean, if it had glass, it was gone. I don't know if y'all can see that, but that's like a shopping center, a double level shopping center, and the glass is totally gone. I don't know why that school bus. I took a picture of a school bus. There's power lines, though, if you can see them out here laying on the ground like that. Everywhere you went, I mean, there was no power on that island for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. This is just looking out across the front side of the hotel. Once again, not a single green leaf. Every single tree was stripped bare of leaves. This was in the back. They had a golf course and some other stuff, and the trees were just barren. This is my room. I thought, hey man, this is the nicest room I've ever been in for Kmart. The Hilton on the beach. Too bad it smelled like a rotten orange, It was bad. But I thought, wow, if only there hadn't been 6 inches of water in here, I could have a party. Bathroom, okay. This was the Kentucky Fried Chicken, what's left of it. Whoop. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a gas station, and this was typical. There's not that many gas stations on Guam anyway. But this was a mobile, and I don't know how much of it you guys can see, but the roof is gone, the windows are gone, it's closed. And because the gas tanks caught fire, there was no gas on that island for 4 weeks. It was 4 weeks before they had any gasoline for even the residents. So the Air Force base on the other side of the island was completely crippled for 2 months, and nobody knew it, not even Saddam Hussein, or he might have gotten better prepared, because we were actually going to invade Saddam Hussein right after New Year's Day in 2003. But because of this, it got pushed back to March 2003. Little known facts of history. This is the temporary office I built up in the penthouse. You like it? I didn't do the tables. Some of the workers around there did. I told them what size and all that, and we brought these chairs up after we disinfected them from the old office. Things are starting to come together. That whole penthouse is now filling up with computer stuff shipped over from the States. I've got everything hooked up there. All I got to do is go down and splice the fiber, and hopefully we get a prompt, a C prompt. And yep, there it is. Now I've got the store online, and I know it doesn't look like much, but we can open. This was a little conference room, a war room I set up next to the office.
What did you say was the baud rate on that connection?
I don't even want to talk about it. I mean, it's like, you guys aren't going to believe it. The normal Kmart runs on a T1. How many are familiar with a T1? Okay, about 3 or 4 guys. That the rest of you, a T1 is, forget what T stands for, but all it is a dry line that runs from the customer's premises to the central office and then to the server it actually acts like an Ethernet connection, basically. So you can get, at that time, you could get 10 megabits out of a T1. 10 megabits. That's pretty good. But the only thing I could find was a dial-up line, and I was able to bring the store online with a 300 baud modem. That's what, when I got back to Texas and I went to work after Christmas, I had never seen this at our office up here in Plano. The people of our office were lined up by the employee entrance. It's one of the bright spots of my career, my 15-year career. The whole staff in the office was all lined up and made like this gauntlet, and when I walked in the back door, they were all applauding. So, you know, I got sick as hell in Guam. I had to go through all kinds of blood tests and stuff when I got back. It took about a week to get all the tests done that they wanted to do to us. And I wasn't the only one. Anybody that went over there for the relief effort had to get a bunch of medical tests. And at first they said I had hepatitis. Wonderful. Well, then it said they did more blood tests, and it went on for another 2 or 3 weeks. And I don't have hepatitis, obviously, or I'd probably be dead, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Huh? I would or wouldn't? It depends, I guess. But they said I didn't have it. Maybe they just didn't want me to sue them. But this war room table is for the other staff that's going to come the next day. The people, the meat market people and all of them. I don't know if you guys have ever worked in retail. If they have a disaster, even here in the States, they'll send their best people, and they won't all come out of one store. The best meat guy might be in Illinois. The best produce guy might be in California. But they pool a team together, and those same people will do every store that gets damaged and reopen like that in an emergency. I was the one for the IT department. So the rest of them, and I was the only one that went to Guam. Usually if a store had a tornado or a bad storm here in the States, there'd be 3 or 4 of us go to the store. And for Guam, I was by myself. Now this is the old room. As I'm getting ready to leave, I decided to take a picture of it after I now knew that it was sewage in there. And what they did, they took every single ceiling tile out. They were so worried about germs and stuff because it's obviously sewage. They were going to gut that entire store. Anything porous was going to be torn out wherever that sewer water was. This was the pool at my hotel. Sadly, I didn't get to swim in it. But you can see, I mean, it would have been nice. These are the power lines. Now those are really, really big. I don't know how to describe it. They're steel, like aircraft cable. And like I said, they were whoops, I missed that's a good shot there. These are more of those big, gigantic power poles that weren't supposed to break. They're supposed to be typhoon proof. And look, this is it's a sideways picture. I'm sorry about that, but this is just the biggest mess you ever saw in your life with that power. This shows how those poles broke. You see this one's laying down, and you can see how they're made. They've got these steel rods all the way around that concrete, and they had already replaced this one, and they're replacing them down the line. Here's the bucket truck, and they're going through and replacing these gigantic power poles that were snapped all over the island by those ridiculously strong winds. There's another one. These laying down. Can you imagine the force needed to knock those over like that? Y'all see that? Yeah. And there's the transformer that was on it. The better shot of it. The car's out of the way now. You can see where it broke right here. Let me zoom in on it a little bit. I'll try to. That help?
Yeah.
See that? That's concrete and steel that snapped at the base. I don't understand it. When I saw this, when I first got off the plane and started driving with that girl to the store and saw those power poles, I thought, this is a lie. They must have got bombed by something here. I've never seen a storm do stuff like that. This was the Sherwood Hotel. What you're looking at there, the wind actually blew the walls out. This is that hotel I was showing you at first, where the walls completely blew out, and if you were up there, you would be able to see through here to the ocean from one side, and it blew. Can y'all see that? The only thing left is the metal framework. It actually blew the walls like an explosion almost. That's what it looks like. And yet, media didn't tell you guys about this, right? And that's just like Alabama or Florida. Guam is our territory. It's what do they call it? A territory, I guess, official territory. They get to vote on some things. They don't get to vote on the United States president, but they get to vote for, what do they call it? Their congressional representative. But their congressional representative on Guam, and I guess Puerto Rico's the same, they do not get to vote in Congress. They just get to be there. So that's kind of a ripoff if you live there. But if they move, if you're a resident of Guam or Puerto Rico and you move to the States, you don't have to do anything and you can vote right away. You're already a citizen. They're considered citizens of the United States. So you would think that the United States would be interested, or the public at large would be interested in this typhoon, right? Nothing on the news, nothing at all. So again, the whole point is, this was the tennis court out by my hotel, and you can see it just flattened the fence, just flattened it. The chain link fence. More trees. I took a lot of pictures. They had a streetcar. When I got tired of riding my bicycle, I got on the streetcar, the old-fashioned kind, you know. And that's the hotel next door. They have a water slide. I didn't get to do that either. Beautiful beaches, but not there for vacation. Now we're back to that. So, and then I took a few more pictures I'll show you. That cannon, by the way, you saw, that was a Japanese World War II cannon. Japan took over Guam during World War II, and we left those cannons, I guess, for a tourist attraction. This is all the stuff they were throwing out of that warehouse in the Kmart. Millions of dollars worth of product. They just bulldozed it out the back. That's the loading dock with all those. Now those are brand new. All that's brand new stuff that you're looking at on the loading dock. And they just bulldozed it because it was under sewer. It was under 8 feet of sewer water. And that's where I found my bicycle. The one I showed you, the Huffy. And I taped a little flashlight on it because it was 1.5 miles from my hotel to the store. And you had to go uphill, and I didn't want to walk every day, so I asked the district manager, I said, I found a bicycle, a brand new Huffy out here in this pile. Can I have it? And first, this guy on the dock here, he said I couldn't have it, and nobody, because it's a health issue thing. And I'm like, well, if I have to keep walking here every day, that's a health issue. You know, I've got a certain amount of time to get this stuff fixed, and I need a bicycle. There's no cars. So the district manager said I could have that bicycle, and I'd still have it. But how was I going to get that thing on the plane, right? This is more stuff that they threw away. I mean, it was just pitiful. Millions and millions of dollars. More cleanup effort. That's the front of the store after we opened. This is some more equipment that I just had to throw away that was underwater. Now these are microwaves, brand new microwaves that were in the warehouse. And everything was underwater. They're up on these big shelves. When the water went down, the microwaves were full of water, so it collapsed the shelving from the weight. More power line. I mean, there wasn't a single power line up in the air, to be honest. I don't remember seeing any. It was sad. All this stuff was underwater. I just took close-up pictures because the guy that I reported to in Flint, he was kind of a jerk. The Kmart IT manager for the whole chain. And he wanted a lot of close-up pictures of this equipment before he would even send me the replacement to make sure that it was really, that I couldn't fix it. You know what I'm talking about? So those pictures you saw. Now this is the warehouse again where the shelves just collapsed from the weight, and they bulldozed all that product out, and they had to clean that warehouse because that sewer water, the last 4 days I was there, I had 102 fever, and I'm still riding that bike to the store and back, and I leave like at 6 in the morning, and I get home about 10 o'clock at night from that store. But because it was important, you know, people were just driving me crazy wanting to get that thing open. That's just more of Guam. Maybe someday I'll go back when it's an actual resort. Yeah, this is on the store floor. This is the switch. You know what a switch is. We got fiber that feeds them, and then each one of these connections goes out like to a cash register or a POS thing. Like Kmart has these scanners that you can scan it and tell how much the price is. You know, that each one of them has to have a connection, and that's how you do it. But that guy that I was telling you about in Flint, he wanted pictures of everything when I was done to make sure I did it right, and I did, or else it wouldn't work, right? He was a trip. I did a warehouse in Minnesota for Kmart, and he came up. Nobody he worked with in Flint liked him. He was in corporate, and they all hated him. This guy was huge. He's about this tall. He'd been in the Marine Corps. He went through basic training 3 times before he got out. But his fellow workers in the office there hated his guts, and they all told me that every time I talked to him. So we're working in this warehouse in Minnesota, Shakopee, Minnesota, and the guy wants to look at my fiber optics, you know, which the fiber optics is on a shelf about yay high. He can't see it. Well, there's no ladders in there where this is, so he wants to get a rolling chair and have me hold it like this while this big 400-pound guy gets up there and stands on that chair. The Kmart manager of the actual distribution center is standing there behind this fella, and while I'm holding the chair, the manager for Kmart, he makes a motion like this. And I didn't do that. You know, I'm not that kind of guy, okay, but that would have been a disaster. And then when I got back from Guam, he flew down to Plano and wanted to thank me personally, and we were also going to start another project for Kmart, and he came down for that training. He actually brought me a hoodie, a Red Wings hoodie. Now, it was about 10 sizes too big, but you know what? I called his boss up in Flint, and I go, wow, you guys were so wrong about Bill. He's really nice. And they're like, what have you done with Bill? That is not Bill. You're not describing. And she said, I said, well, he gave me a hoodie. And she says, you got to be kidding. I've worked with that evil man for 10 years. He's never given anybody in this office a single thing. You know, and I'm like, well, he did. So maybe, who knows? I don't want to go there.
Punched his butt.
Huh?
You punched his butt.
Yeah.
He thought you were great.
Well, I think that that's kind of Guam in a nutshell. If y'all have any questions?
Power poles, how deep are they in the ground?
They didn't break off in the ground. I don't know how deep they are. I'm assuming they have bolts on them. If you go down LBJ or something and you see those big poles for the lights, she wanted to know how deep in the ground were the power poles. Well, they were like these ones you see on LBJ. They have these gigantic bolts all the way around. They were bolted to the ground like that, so they must have like a base underground. They didn't break there. They broke up a little higher and it broke the steel too, the rebar. So
They're anchored good.
they are anchored, and they're supposed to be typhoon proof. They also have earthquakes in Guam, so it's a really lovely place. But the people, I got to say about the locals, they were very, very nice people. I mean, they're simple-minded people, and obviously a lot of people were hurting, and I didn't hear any complaints, I mean, people were always friendly. They say hi fi, that means hello. Next question.
Yes, what is the difference between a hurricane and a typhoon?
A typhoon is I believe in the southern hemisphere, is that right?
No, Pacific.
Pacific.
It's the Pacific, that's right, yeah. I knew it was something like that. There really is no difference other than they call them typhoons over there and we call them hurricanes, because I guess hurricane, and we used to name them all after women. I thought that was appropriate. Hell hath no fury.
So was everybody exposed to this horrible sewage, and what did it cause some terrible?
A lot of people were sick on the plane home, and the bad news was there were seats available on the return flight coach. So I had to fly coach, and I was in the middle on a 777. You got like 3 seats, 5 seats, and then 3 seats over here. So it's like 9 seats or something like that across, or 11 seats. So I'm kind of in the middle of 5 people, and to go to the bathroom is like, and it's 20 hours you're on the plane. So that's, yeah. Next.
There was some discussion in Congress on Guam floats. Did it float around during the storm?
What now?
The island of Guam, in the United States Congress, they're talking about how it floats.
There's a congressman that said, you gotta be careful that not too many people get on one side of the island because it might tip over.
Oh, I don't know about that. It seems it's like Guam is like stone. I mean, everywhere I look is rocks and stuff. I mean, other than the beach, it looks like it would be very sturdy. I mean, I didn't get to see the Air Force base.
It was a joke.
Okay.
It was the dumbest congressman ever.
Yeah, what's the population of Guam?
I thought it was like 40-something thousand, but at that time, is that about right? Does that sound right to you, or do you know?
Probably so.
Yeah.
So how did you wash? Did you just, because everything, the water was off, wasn't it? So did you just pray or scrape the dirt off?
On what?
But when you were there on the island?
Scrape the dirt? Oh no, this is the thing. The hotel had a generator. All the hotels had generators, and we had water coming out of the shower, and it wasn't really hard flow. It was like a pulsating, you know what I'm talking about? Have y'all ever, because the generator is driving a pump, and I don't know, they put a sign on the doors of all the rooms the day before I left. It said, "Don't drink the water." I wasn't drinking it, but if I'd have known, the entire island's water supply was contaminated with sewage. If I had known that, I'd have been really, really careful when I'm brushing my teeth, and I probably would have got bottled water, maybe even, or not brushed my teeth. I don't know what I would do, but I did get sick, and you will get sick if you drink water with sewage in it.
Yeah, so basically, but it wasn't Kmart policy to open the store, just give stuff away to the island.
No, they have to sell it. They're not going to, Kmart is not going to give anything away. In fact, I thought, wow, Kmart's not as cheap as I thought, because they're spending $9,000 on my ticket just to get over here. That don't even count the return flight, but then again, they're so cheap, I may not be going home. So, you know what, though, Kmart, even in 2002, they were in a lot of financial trouble. They had just bought Sears, and we closed about 200 stores nationwide that year. So yeah, they were cheap. I mean, they needed that money. They really needed that $1 million a day. I don't know how many stores would just give stuff away like that. I mean,
Yeah, but you know, on a small island, you buy goodwill and all that stuff.
I'd like to think that
I would think, you know, for a few days anyway.
yeah, I would like to think that they would, but they could have opened that store the day I got there if it hadn't been for the POS systems not online. And I guess even if they may have given stuff away. I'm talking a little bit out of turn, because once I had the POS systems online, then there's a transaction record of everything that leaves the store, and that's the main thing they need to know, even if they're going to give stuff away. So I wasn't a clerk. I didn't actually check anybody out. They could have been giving stuff away. I'm not going to say anything that bad about them if I don't really know for sure, okay?
Yeah, because they lost, you told us, they lost millions and millions of damaged stuff out the back, so, you know.
Yeah, they had to throw all that out. I mean, but to look at it this way, my ticket and all of that product that they threw out and all the expense of flying people over there to get the store back open, all of that stuff was paid for by insurance companies, right? Because they have insurance, and so I guess they don't care.
So they didn't lose much anyway.
They lost a lot, I think, because I don't know how insurance could cover all that, to be honest. It's damage and product, and I mean, you'd have to really, and then you got manpower to clean it all up, and I don't know how long before they could use that warehouse, but it was just it's terrible. And I don't know, everybody in this room has probably been through something like that, but to me, what made it unique, it would have been nothing if that typhoon had hit, say, in 2006. All of y'all would have seen it on the news, but it happened to hit at a time when we were in the process of invading Iraq, and that's the only reason it made it different, you know. And it seems like throughout my whole life, I've been in places I'm not supposed to be at times I shouldn't be there. The Waco thing, Super Typhoon, good God. One of the first jobs I got when I went to work at Data Star was the ATF offices in downtown Dallas. You know, why would you send me down there, given that I've made so many films critical of ATF? But hey, I learned stuff. When I go in there, I'm a computer expert. I'm not going to tell you that I'm above pulling an Edward Snowden. In fact, I've already got a ticket to Moscow. Move over. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I seem to have trouble composing questions, so my questions in the form of comments. One, I've been monitoring the media quite a few years, not since 2009, because before that I was too busy to pay much attention and analyze. I just had to listen and get the top news, like I get the top news in sports. Then I don't analyze it much too. That's the way I am with headlines. But I've been monitoring radio carefully since 2009. I paid attention to 9/11 on the radio. I watched Desert Storm on TV. And I realized I didn't need to watch it on TV because it was repeating the same thing hour after hour without a single new item. I want to tell you, I noticed with media, and what I noticed about the media as much as anything is what they don't say.
Exactly.
It's not, what they do say is not true. It's what they don't say and what they leave out. And it is troubling to me. Dallas Morning News, radios, all of them. I've listened to all the channels by just scanning, and our main KERA is supposed to be our public channel. So I'm done with that. That's a comment.
I got you.
My second comment is I had the opposite happen to me. I have a lot of friends and relatives that live in Florida, and they themselves will blank out your information because they don't want to affect the value of their home. And when it gets repaired, they don't want you to know what they repaired. So your own friends will blank out what happened to their real estate. Secondly, on that type of subject of weather, I landed in Guam. I've seen it in daylight from the air. I landed there. Midway Islands, I landed there. I was going to Okinawa for a year. My husband at the time went 3 weeks earlier and lived through a hurricane, barricaded like people do 3 or 4 days or 2 or 3 days. And I got there, and there was no typhoon, no hurricane, and that part of the world is dependent on their typhoons to replenish their water supplies. And especially an island like Guam, Okinawa. There was such a bad drought there that they gave us barrels to collect water in and told us to put water in our bathtubs because there was no water to be had. And then after that, I went to 5 different locations, and every one of those 5 different worldwide locations had a severe drought, one after the other. I'm aware of weather. And people have such a short memory about this type of weather. They treat it, an event goes by like Irma, and they treat it like it never happened. And it amazes me. I told you, I have trouble formulating a question. My questions are maybe something like, shouldn't people have a better memory of that type of devastating disaster and prepare better instead of using the old ways? That's what I'm thinking. And the other thing, media comment.
Okay, I think I understand what your question was. Do people have a better memory about storms? I gave a talk not long ago that the media decides what you're going to remember and what you're not going to remember. I gave a demonstration here where a headline event that was in the headlines 24/7 a week or two before this meeting, and not one person in the room, and I believe there were more people that day than there are now, not a single person could remember the event. Not one. And that had just happened. So no, I don't. The media decides what you're going to remember long term and what you're not, and why they do it a certain way. They owe you nothing, by the way. You buy the products that they advertise. The biggest advertiser in the media is the United States military. Now, the media is beholden under the government on 3 different levels. Government is a big advertiser, obviously. They support them that way. The second level is the FCC, PUC, organizations like that control the media. And the third is, for television at any rate, none of them are in business without NASA. They pay about $250 million, an NBC or a CBS, $250 million for a communication satellite, but that's not even 1/100th the cost of putting the thing in orbit, and that's done by NASA. So the government ultimately can control those satellites, even if you really think about it. They belong to the United States of America. They don't belong to NBC. NBC will share a satellite with CNN and various things. So if the government wanted to just put a halt on all communication, they just throw a switch, and it's, the whole television network would go dark. It's all satellite based. So does that answer your question?
Sort of. Yes,
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That pollution the sewage pollution sounds like it covered a great portion of the island. Is that correct?
The what pollution?
The sewage.
The sewage, I don't know if it got all, you're talking about the island itself. Yeah, it was every single
What did they
person.
do? What did they do to?
They shut the
decontaminate?
water off as soon as that happened, but the problem was that because the island is not like Galveston, where I came from, that's flat. I mean, we're in Galveston, you're like 16 feet above sea level in the middle. Well, in Guam, it's hundreds of feet. I don't know if it used to be a volcano or what. It kind of looks like it was a volcano at one time, but it's way up there, and there's houses and apartments way up in the top part. And what happened was when the electricity went off, the sewage pumps died. And so the sewage actually, like Kmart's in the middle, the pressure from that sewage coming downhill just shot up through the vents or the grates in the floor and filled the store with sewage. And then I don't know what in the world happened. It must have been something like that at a water treatment plant. It did the same thing and contaminated all the water. So they shut the whole water thing off, even the gravity-fed ones. This is like here. They have pumps it up into a tower, then gravity feeds it to your house. It's a constant way of keeping the water going. They shut that off as soon as they realized it, but a lot of people were sick. A lot of people did get
But
sick.
what did they do to decontaminate it?
I don't know. I was not there long enough. They never did even turn the water back on. At the store where I worked, there was no water. The bathroom, we had employees go in and like take water that we were getting from somewhere and dump it in the toilets to flush them every now and then.
I'm wondering, I remember Rush Limbaugh one year interviewed a man who he and his family had just been through a tremendous storm that they said was 200 miles an hour on Guam that virtually leveled the island, and they were just grateful, even though they lost everything, that all the family members were
How
still
long ago
alive.
was that?
I don't know. And I'm
Was it
wondering
this
if
one?
the same year.
It could have been, but
Now that same year, they clocked winds off the coast of Australia at 350 miles an hour.
yeah, that could have been from the same typhoon because Guam and Australia are real close together.
Okay.
And I had actually ordered a saxophone from Australia for Christmas for my youngest boy. He wanted a saxophone, and I ordered it from Australia. They had the best deal on that. It was a Yamaha YA something. You know, he had to have the most expensive saxophone,
Good.
and I didn't want to buy it. I kept trying to talk him into one that was a little less money. So what I did is I got a box of the cheap one, and I put the YA 50 or whatever it was. Some musician in here might know, but I put the expensive one in the cheap box. And on Christmas, that was the whole thing. I'd spend a lot of money on my boys, but for me, the thrill was watching them open up stuff and thinking they got screwed. And then, if you ever have kids, you ought to try that. It you know, at least justifies a little bit of the money you spent. Go ahead.
Moser talks about Guam and some of the implications of that. Is that what got you started into looking into media and all the stuff that they don't
You
say?
talking about the cooperation?
Well, I mean, you mentioned that CNN wasn't reporting this stuff, so your girlfriend thought you were lying.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I already knew the government controls the media. I already knew that. I didn't think they'd be controlling this because I had no idea we were going to invade Iraq. This is before they invaded Iraq. I had no idea that this storm was holding up our invasion. In fact, I think I told some people in the group here, in the old king and queen days, the king would have said, "This is a sign from God. I'm not supposed to invade Iraq." You know?
so maybe George Bush wasn't listening to God.
George Bush, in my opinion, you're talking about the junior, I don't think he can read. But
Didn't George Bush Sr. have the first Iraqi invasion in 2000?
yeah, that was called Desert Storm.
Yeah.
You remember
yeah,
that?
right.
No, 91.
Yeah,
91.
Yeah. I had two different people in Army intelligence, one still active, who had been there at that war, tell me that war was planned in a secret meeting in Paris, France, with Gorbachev, Bush Sr., and Saddam Hussein.
more than likely they planned stuff way in advance. I mean, if you read on Wikipedia now, it says that the decision was made about 8 months before we invaded Iraq, that they were going to do it, and that they took a consensus in Congress, and they took a consensus through the administration, the DOD, and all of the alphabet agencies, and they settled on weapons of mass destruction as the reason. They settled on that. They knew there was none. I mean, I was against it. I guess Donald Trump was against it back then. He said he was. I didn't never support going back into Iraq, ever. And I had no idea they were going to do it while I was there, in Guam.
In my opinion, the United States is one of the biggest criminal organizations in the world for what we've done in the Middle East.
They really are. I hate to say it. It's just like, but what I think, I'm just ashamed of people, though, in this country more than I am the government, because it's just like whoever wrote, John Gentry wrote that they, they do something, the media, they failed the American people? No. They don't owe us anything. There's no law that says they have to tell you anything. And she was talking about omission of news, which basically is worse than fake news, because fake news, at least you know something must have happened over there. If I said, oh, there was Trump dropped his drawers on the other side of that wall, and it didn't happen, and maybe somebody did, you can go take a look, If you don't report anything, that's worse. And so the media, if they're guilty of anything, I can't see anything that they're guilty of. Actually, they're just there to make money. They're not there for you. I mean, they're not there for me. I thought they were, but hey, it's up to us. We're on our own here, people. You need to start getting some more people into these meetings. That's all I can tell you. Because this is how we're gonna communicate as we come down this winding road. We're getting further and further away from an America that I thought we had. Okay, and I'm not talking about making America great again. I'm not racist. He's not racist, even though my youngest or my second youngest boy thinks he is. That's a whole nother topic. But I said to John the other day that when I was growing up and I was in my young 20s and early or late teens, half of my brain was in fantasy and half of it was in reality.
Yeah.
Today, 3/4 of these people's brain is in fantasy, and they save 1/4 of it for reality. Maybe, yeah. I mean, they're video gamers. They love these movies that make no sense. They listen to 10 minutes of the news, Anderson Cooper screaming like a little girl about some topic that probably, wouldn't amount to a hill of beans, but they get all excited, and my sons, except for 2 of them, the other 2, they get so excited about issues, I'm like, well, are you guys like, do y'all need to tell me something about your sexuality? And they're like, no, Dad, we're married. And I'm like, okay, then, so why are you screaming at me about this topic? Well, it's not right, Dad. I'm like, well, I don't have any control over it. Sorry, I don't make the laws. But yet those kids, and I'm sure for those of you that have children, you know what I'm talking about. They get so excited about things we can't control. And yet, the stuff that we need to start worrying about, they don't even know what's going on. Questions? Oh, sorry.
Getting back to Guam, you didn't mention anything about casualties of the hospital. 40,000 people, you think something...
You know what? I know for a fact when one of the guys from the Red Cross that was staying at our hotel, we ate breakfast every morning in the hotel, and he said that they knew of 10 casualties, and that was on day 3 that I was there. But when you look on Wikipedia now, this is so weird, guys, and I know that this was it's probably a national security thing, because if they said, well, we couldn't tell you about this because of the war, then that would be like admitting that the government controls the media, right? They don't want you to think that or know that. Well, guess what it says on Wikipedia about Super Typhoon Pongsona with 250 mile an hour wind. It says right there, Super Typhoon. Well, they're only calling it a typhoon now. And they say there was one death. Well, I happen to know that's a lie on Wikipedia, but I'm not even going to waste my time dealing with it.
That was the second part. I was wondering, with all the smartphones and everything, if there's any news reports, if you look back on that day, just type in typhoon with that date, was there any reporting?
I never saw the whole time I was there for 10 days.
Did anybody look?
I asked in the room, do y'all remember anything about it at all?
No, I mean, if you look now, would it be like LA Times or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing, but I'm just saying, when I was wandering the streets or riding my bike, I didn't see, like one CNN reporter, one CNN truck, one cameraman, or Weather Channel, and like you go down to these storms we just had, they're all over the place. They're the only ones there, really. The hypocrisy of the media, they try to make it look like they're there for you, and I don't think, getting back to her question or her comment, I don't like the media going into these storms like that. They usually make them way worse than they actually are, or they totally miss the boat. Maybe they don't even report how bad it really was. I didn't think that Katrina was all that bad. I know that, did y'all watch that thing on the Weather Channel recently about the top 10 worst hurricanes? You saw it. They had the Galveston storm, the 1900 storm, as number 2 and Katrina number 1, and I almost vomited. 10,000 people died in the Galveston storm. What was the death toll from Katrina? It was like 100 or something, wasn't it? It was in the hundreds, but 10,000 people. The entire island was wiped away. So how could Katrina be the worst? I just don't see that. Any other questions?
And speaking about control of the media, I think you mentioned something about satellite trucks. Would you have any photos of some satellite trucks, perhaps?
Yes, but I can't get a picture.
There it is. Come back on.
Gentry, oh well. Satellite truck is basically a truck that has a satellite dish on the top, and I build those now, or I do the electronics for them for the government. But back in 1993, they look a little bit different than they do now. The media had them. The government had them. This was something that I was talking to you guys about a while back, and I didn't get a chance to show it to you because my compadre back there probably didn't want me to at that time, but I think what he's trying to say now is that he wants me to do it. What did you do? I don't get it. I don't see it. Sorry. Y'all don't get to see it.
Well, you said you had it on the laptop.
Oh, it's on stills.
It's not on my stick, no.
There we go. Okay. This probably can't see it on this stupid slide machine, John.
Well, can we dim the lights again?
For 25 years or 24 years I worked this case, right? You guys know what it is, right?
You mean Columbo worked the case?
Columbo. Yep, the guy that notices people's shoes untied and you better wear loafers like this fella. Okay, what you see here is their bus. 25 years though, I looked at the video that I showed you guys of that raid, right? I looked at it from frame by frame, from every angle, and studied every little thing. Well, there was...
Waco.
You like that?
Yeah, Waco.
Yeah, so there was an ambulance. Let me get rid of that, John, because there was this ambulance in the driveway, all right? They came in allegedly during the ceasefire, allegedly on February the 28th. Allegedly, at the time, there was only one cameraman on the scene, and he was in a Ford Bronco, right? For years, I wanted to know why these two agents that drove the ambulance in were hiding from the camera. Every time the camera would zoom in on them, they would duck down and try to hide their faces. So I knew a lot of the agents. I met them after the raid, interfaced with them in and around Waco. I wanted to see who they were and why they were so hell-bent on hiding from the camera. So what I started doing was zooming in. And you can zoom in, you know, nowadays. Back in '93 we couldn't do this, but thanks to technology, we can get really, really good still shots from video, and we can just keep right on zooming in, you know? Something we couldn't do in '93. So now, in this particular shot, I can zoom way in, and I don't know how clear it is from where you are. It's pretty clear where I'm at. But right here is the Ford Bronco that belongs to the guy that's running the camera that's filming this, right? So I've already told you the last time we had so many edit cuts in this. I decided, why are they cutting the film while they're filming that ambulance? So I looked on the other side of the edit cut, zoomed in again on that same mirror, and that's what I saw. And it was on the other side of an edit cut, but it's supposed to be the same piece of film from the same day, you know, continuous. The Bronco is now gone, and it's been replaced by a government satellite truck. Now, I work on these, so I know what they look like. And that thing has a air-powered mast, and this is the air tank over here. The raised.
It's not going to be real clear.
It is not clear. If anybody wants to come up and look at it, you're welcome to. But what we found is that this couldn't have been, this is proof that that thing wasn't being done on Sunday. It had to be done before, either Friday or Saturday. And when I found that, and I wasn't even looking for it, it was like I started crying. It was the middle of the night, because 24 years I've been looking for the absolute smoking gun proof. We knew it had to be edited, and they had to have time to do that. And as a matter of fact, when you look at it here, you can see another ambulance, and there was only supposed to be one, but you can actually see another one up here. You can see a car hauler trailer being pulled by a white pickup, but you don't see any of the cattle trailers. So the whole ATF story, the whole government story is a complete lie, as if we didn't already know that. But now we have absolute proof. So what else?
So what would that satellite truck give ability to do?
That satellite truck could actually broadcast whatever the camera girl, it was a camera girl, we know that too, because we can, whenever these guys that are wearing the black suits inside that ambulance, whenever they move in front of the wing window on that ambulance, it turns it into like a mirror. So then we can see straight back at the camera and who's running the camera. As it turns out, it's a girl with rather long blonde hair. Probably a government, you know, there was no media there when this was done. The funny thing that we found recently is that when I started giving John some research to do on some of the players that I interviewed back in '93, there was a particular girl that lives here in Dallas who had been a wife of one of the CSA. Are y'all familiar with CSA, Covenant Sword and Arm of the Lord? They were a cult or a white supremacist group in northern Arkansas that got raided by the ATF in 1986. And you never heard about it because that's how they want to do it. They don't want you to know when they raid these groups. because all of these groups across the country, the Cavazos Indians in the desert, the CSA near Mena, Arkansas, the Branch Davidians next to Raytheon, they all had one thing in common. They were supplying arms to the Contras. So when they were going to shut the operation down, they didn't want any media coverage. Well, with CSA, they did it completely without media coverage. And everybody from CSA that was still alive, they went to Elohim City. Does everybody know about Elohim City? Okay. And then they later obviously were implicated in the Oklahoma City bombing. We were doing research on this particular girl that I interviewed in '93, and somehow she got linked to the bombing. She was in the Oklahoma City bombing thing. So all this stuff, the internet gives us the ability to look back in time. Something we couldn't do before the internet. You guys know what I'm talking about? You can correlate things. It does it for you. And you would never connect the dots. But now we can do that. We have that power. I wanted to say one more thing while I've got your attention. If you want to know what is going to happen with the government and the media, watch a movie. Any movie, I don't care. But they're going to tell you, I think, because I told John about a movie that came out in 1987 that showed you exactly what they were going to do in Oklahoma City. It showed you exactly what they were going to do with this white supremacist stuff. All of that was in there. Even a Carol Howe figure was in there. If y'all remember Carol Howe, she was the FBI informant.
ATF.
ATF rather, and she was played by Deborah Winger. Tom Berringer played this white supremacist that was going to assassinate. He assassinated a Jewish talk radio host in California. Now this was in 1987. And all this stuff eventually came to pass, but it was later on, and they tried to blow up the federal building in Oklahoma City in this movie. They were it was a rogue part of the United States Army that was actually funding them and giving them weapons and stuff. All this stuff is actual truth later on, but hell, they had it in a movie in 1987. It's called Betrayed. The movie's called Betrayed, if you want to look it up.
Just to clarify, so you're not giving impressions you didn't need to give, you were indicating that Waco was involved in arms to the Contras. Can you qualify where Koresh came in at?
Koresh, as you remember, I think I already discussed this in the last time out, didn't I?
Well, but you just, the way you said it now, people could be confused.
Okay, well, Koresh came in there by accident whenever he's trying to help those old ladies get back in their homes. They lived there since the 50s. And then excuse my language, that George Roden pushed them out and they had to live in tents and buses in Palestine. And these were some really old ladies. They were in their 70s and some in their 80s. And so he wanted to get them their homes back. So he went out there and told George to get off. He got George's mother to sign a document saying that George was no longer the leader that David was. His name was Vernon Howell at that time, but he did all that, and so he wasn't supposed to be there. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes I'm in the right place at the right time or the wrong place. I don't know. He had the same problem, it looks like, because he's dead. Hopefully, my dumb girlfriend, the one that left, she wanted to know who's the beneficiary on my checking account. Yeah. I told her what I'm doing, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, well, who's the beneficiary?" She said, "Can you at least put me on there on your checking account?" No.
Since you're so knowledgeable, jumping around here, I have a lot of friends on Facebook. I get a lot of news on Facebook from all over the world. And somebody, I'm trying to remember who published NASA, supposedly came on and all of a sudden said we're communicating with 4 different types of aliens. And
who?
NASA.
Oh, NASA.
Yeah, and then somebody questioned, well, why would you say this before? And the answer was, well, we assumed you knew that. So.
I don't know nothing about it. I'm so sorry. I think that from what I've seen, guys, and I've been to Washington, My brother works there in the government for Homeland Security. I think we have 3 groups in Washington. It has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. One group I call, and 2 of the groups have been there a long time. And I call one of those the racists, and the other group is the communists, for lack of a better word, but they're not true communists. And then there's a third group that's more recent, I'd say 20 to 25 years old, and they're like the technocrats, and they want to try to go for this utopian view of a constitutional America that probably couldn't exist, but they're younger than the other 2 groups. So the racists control the military, the CIA, and some other branches, but the communists control like the FBI and the ATF. I mean, these people, it has nothing to do with the president. The president is powerless. These 3 groups are at war with each other, but it's not like they're just going to start killing each other. They're struggling to take over and put the country in their ideological pathway that they want to go down instead of the other way.
I think we're through the question. You have a question?
So what's your take on 9/11? Was it all orchestrated by these?
I tried to stay away from 9/11 because I was still working on Waco. I believe that whenever you are a serious investigator like Lieutenant Colombo, if he allowed himself to get sidetracked by every little bum that showed up dead on the street. But no, I was on an airplane a couple of days before 9/11 hit. I was flying to Atlanta for Kmart, and I don't know, you guys, I'm an IT professional. I carry these scissors in a pouch. These scissors are that long, and they're cable shears. And I can literally take a penny and cut it in half with them. All right? They're very sharp. They're very deadly. They're also called surgical shears. They're a hell of a lot more deadly than any box knife. The other thing I used to have is a 4-inch buck knife in my pocket. And I would walk on the plane with both of those things. The scissors were on my belt. This is 2 days before 9/11. Because when I hit the ground at a store, I got to start working immediately. So I have some of my tools on my person. They didn't take your pocket knife away, did they? No. So let me ask you, the kind of box knives that these guys supposedly had, these 150-pound Arabs, were the kind that I envisioned we had in the Kmart store. They're little thin things, and the blade sticks out about a 1/4 inch, just enough to cut the box, but not enough to really cut through the box and damage the product, which could be anything from cream of wheat to, Wheaties. If that's what they're talking about, and they were, because the guy, the intern that came up with that subterfuge was not thinking fourth dimensionally. He was thinking in the present. That information was given to you after 9/11. So they're thinking, well, all knives are banned. They're thinking in the present. They're not thinking, oh, well, these guys could have had buck knives with serrated edges. They could have just walked on board with them. Nobody was prohibited. Why the box knives? Are the Arabs that really stupid, but they know how to find 4 flights that are all going to be positioned perfectly so that these planes can hit their target within a specified time? And if you've ever done any flying, you know how rare is it to get 4 planes all take off on time? That doesn't happen, and I fly a whole lot. One of them's going to be late. They're going to have a weather. They're going to have a mechanical. That whole thing. The third thing that it hit me about it was the cabin doors have been locked ever since 1973, when that Jewish guy at Baltimore, Washington, tried to assassinate Richard Nixon with an airplane. Y'all remember that? There's a movie about it. It's called The Assassination of Richard Nixon. And this guy was planning to hijack a 707 or 727 and fly it into the White House. And it's a true story. They killed him on the runway, but he actually had a stewardess at gunpoint, and the pilots would not open the door. They never would. And he was going to shoot the stewardess. FBI sharpshooters shot him and stormed the plane. But the policy at every airline since that point, and probably even before, I've been told this by pilots, is you never open the cockpit door for anyone who is not a qualified pilot employed by the airline, because if you do, it is the same thing as crashing the plane. You just crash the plane. So there would be no circumstance, no matter how many box cutters you had, no matter how many throats you slit, where those pilots would ever open that door, because they're trained that they just crashed that plane. So to me, forget all the pancake theories and things. The weakest part of the whole story is how did they get past the locked cockpit door? I'm waiting for your answer. Surely there's somebody in here that
Yeah, on the
wants a rebuttal on that. Okay, here we got a rebuttal in the back.
No, the latest deal is the fact that these planes actually landed on the planes that crashed into the towers that were military planes. In fact, they weren't commercial planes.
They weren't commercial, they were
That's what
military?
that's what everyone said on the ground. They said these planes were not normal.
I don't know, I just know.
This discussion could go on forever.
It could, but I just would like to know. For me, it doesn't matter how they collapsed. I do know that they bombed them probably on the same day they attacked Waco in '93, because that was that first bombing. And I'm guessing they had structural engineers come into that basement to check the integrity of that tower after that. And I'm guessing that the guys, if it was me and I was the engineer, I would say, the heck of a blast went off here. I can't guarantee this building ain't, hurt. And, what are you going to do? If you own that building, there's a lot of money to be made by bringing those buildings down, a lot of money. I'm not saying that anybody planned it. I just don't understand how 4 guys can take over a plane with 100 and something passengers, and half of them, or more than half of them, would be male passengers. Because really, if you fly back in those days, there's very few women in the daytime on planes. I don't know, it's all business guys, and they're like me. You got a big pocket knife. So how did these guys,
The whole thing is
it's impossible.
the whole thing is.
Okay, I'm required to make this a question. I want you to go back to the comment you made before you were talking about 3 groups warring with each other for media attention and all.
Who? What?
I want you to go back to the comment you made before you were explaining something about 3 groups in Washington. And
Oh, that. Well, that's
glossed
just.
over something that's of a concern to me, which is labeling.
I think that people, I already said in my other meeting, I refuse to be labeled. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, and I'm not even a Libertarian. I have voted for all of them at various times or another, and I never vote a straight ticket, and I don't split the ticket. I mean, I do split the ticket, whatever. Sometimes I get so disgusted I don't vote, I don't watch sports anymore. I'm totally just washed up as an American. I'm a terrible citizen, and I confess, but no. The point is that, logically speaking, this whole deal about the international bankers and the Bilderbergers and the Jews and all of that, the Illuminati, that to me is a part of the distraction. We're the only ones that can fix this situation and bring it back to a country for the people, by the people. But in order to do that, we got to quit being distracted. Okay? Nobody wants to live in a slavery situation like we have now. Not even the people in the government. Go ahead.
Do you declare yourself male or female? You're labeled.
I refuse to answer that question. On the grounds that, I might make people mad. No, I actually am a male, heterosexual male, actually. And a damn good one. But
You're going to sit down now.
oh! Yeah!
Go this way. You trip over the wire.
All right. I turn my microphone on?
Sure.
Actually, don't turn the microphone on.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to be first? You get to comment on a comment. You got 5 minutes.
Oh, I wasn't trying to offend anybody.
I got 4 minutes and 53 seconds.
Yeah.
I should have made an announcement. Something happened this week. It's not an announcement for the future, but I actually saw something that might, this is a theory, be interpreted as good news. There was a rally in Washington, D.C. By the so-called right wing, not the, just, I guess they like Trump. And the Black Lives Matter was out there like always, and, ready to have some more conflict and so forth. And they started heckling the right-wingers that had a stage and a microphone, and something unusual happened. Instead of escalating into more bad feeling and a fight, it became something quite different when the leader of the organizer of this right-wing protest invited the Black Lives guys to come up, and he gave them the microphone and let them talk. And he started spouting his stuff, and the crowd actually responded positively to some of it. Not all of it, but it was enough to completely reverse that. And by the end, there's pictures of them taking selfies with their kids and stuff. So that was a piece of unusual news. And that's one of your omission news type things.
Yeah, right.
And then the alternative media is Infowars in particular is trying to make a big deal of a related topic. When Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston, racial harmony seemed to be really in stark contrast to what was been in the news with Charlottesville. And so they took so many pictures and videos of black people helping white, and just every which way you can imagine, Mexican, everything. And it went against the narrative that the media has been pushing, trying to push this race war. Because the divide and conquer, the end game looks like it's going to be a militarized state. I mean, they're militarizing the police. Even in small towns now, the police have these armored vehicles with machine guns, and just, it's unbelievable. And there's not even a criminal in 100 miles. So that's the thing I didn't announce. Now, getting back to the talk, there was something, it kind of got into a little semantic, how do you say this politely? Piss and match with John about semantics, about whether the media has duty to report the news. Well, legally, maybe you might say they don't, but we've been sold since we were born. That's what they do. And when you go back to the Constitution, they didn't have a media with this kind of power in those days. So the media, if we're going to have a country kind of like we think we want, or a lot of us at our age thought we had, the media pretty much has to be more honest. And this gets down to more basic questions, about morality and honesty. I've heard the thing that we're in a post-truth era, postmodern, post-truth, where whatever I feel is important, and truth is taking a backseat. Objective truth is under fire now. So this has to do with the media, but I think, who thinks? Let's look at it this way. In this room, what do we got? A dozen people, a little more. Who thinks the media has a duty to report the truth?
Can I say one thing on that?
Well, you get 5 minutes.
You get your
Yeah, so say that. Make a mark. Make a mark to bring that up, because It's semantics is the way I look at it. So I think we pretty much agree on some of the basic thing of what's going to make things better, what's going to make things right and wrong. But that was just something I noticed. So I guess you're going to have to just sort through this stuff yourself and use the internet more than the mainstream media. That's all I can say. I don't know what to do, but I'm glad people are still talking about this stuff, and let the real experts take on from here.
Where are the real experts, Hank? I'm waiting for them to show. I think what Ken is demonstrating is the Overton window. The Overton window culturally has been moved so far that we no longer require truth from our media, from our politicians, and we find from our law enforcement. In fact, it's even a matter of legal record that a policeman can lie on the stand. And so we're in this situation, and we didn't get here without the media being complicit. Where is an Edward R. Murrow who will stand up against, in that case, I think it was Senator McCarthy, and call the bluff on him? So I think that truth is the issue. When you lose the issue of truth, you lose science. We've had a boatload of politicized science that you really scientifically can't even call science anymore, because when politics becomes the motive force and things are being declared by consensus, what happened to the facts? So we have a number of situations there where there's really a clarion call for the truth to come forth. And one of the issues here also is policy, and what's done by policy in situations when we start examining what Ken presented on before, the situation there at Mount Carmel in Waco. Many steps were taken because of policy. Many different groups complied because of policy. So does it mean when a SWAT team or the FBI takes over some ongoing crime scene that all of a sudden we have effectively a media blockout because we're not getting what's really happening there? We're being denied the facts of what's actually happening. I believe we had a Dallas reporter, Lynn Margolis, who reported, because at that point the media was actually listening to the scanners, the police scanners, reported 14 dead inside Mount Carmel the first evening, which, you know, the media's first evening would have been Sunday. We just lost our power.
Lost power.
We lost power. Yeah, it did.
Nobody did it.
Something came unplugged.
Well, I noticed a couple lights went out too.
There's no power here.
Did we lose some lights as well? No. Well, this went out, the projector went out. Are we back up?
You want me to? I'm not gonna touch that camera.
This thing's still running, right?
Yeah.
Where's this go to? This go?
I don't know, I mean, everything went out
I
here.
know, but it's got before, and I had to go in the other room.
Maybe it's a fuse, like you said.
I have that.
I think that plug in the wall, that's the only thing I can think of, is it plugged in well.
It might be a fuse.
Nobody did
Yeah, I
anything
got
to
a
the
fellow
power.
guy, my brother just sent. He works for the government, he works for the media guy now, he's watching my, just not watching whatever happens, sitting when I get a chance. I think it's probably.
Did Tom go around?
Yeah.
Yeah, one off now.
I don't know.
Light on the power strip?
That's the way it was.
No. There's no light on the power strip.
No power.
That means there's no power.
There's no power.
That means power.
Okay, well, I'll just,
It's on, it's on.
oh, it just went on.
It's on.
Okay, we're
It's
back.
on.
We're back, Tom. We don't know.
Fuse box. Fuse box?
I don't know, but it's back on.
Sometimes those little power strips get hot. Could be that.
Well, everything.
Okay,
went.
everything went.
One of those power strips.
Don't worry about it, that we don't need the projector right now, I don't
There
think.
might be too much power in
I've
there.
got a
Okay.
projector and plug,
Oh.
Okay.
so we don't need it anymore, I'm trying to.
Well, go ahead and finish.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm waiting,
Go ahead.
okay. Okay, Tom, you don't have to do anything more there,
I just
okay,
unplugged the projector.
fine,
That
okay,
was, so we don't put the load on that.
okay.
Circuit.
So anyway, the Overton window is a big issue. I do blame the media. I blame their complicity here. And I also bring into question, I mean, we were supposed to be in a government of the people. And I think nothing belies that more than some of the policies that begin to become enacted when there's some kind of incident. And you know, it's going down to the local level. One of the reasons I think that there is so much militarization is simply because of the policies. If the policies were not, I mean, it used to be okay if there was a warrant out for you and the sheriff or one of his deputies would come up and knock on the door and say, time for you to come on in. We need you. You know, if somebody runs out the back door, then they get out the posse. But there was much less violence on both sides of the matter. And so, you know, whatever happened to the community cop on the beat, whatever happened to the sheriff's deputies who conducted things in a, what do you call it? It's like different levels of, you don't escalate situations. You try to bring it to a lower level of escalation all the time as you're working. And that's what I believe good cops should do. And somehow or other, the good cops have been losing out. And we don't have as many of those around. And I believe that's really what we need to bring focus on is what the heck has happened in these situations, both to the media and to law enforcement, to where we can have a church. I don't know if you all remember this. Manuel Noriega took sanctuary in a church when a team had been sent down there to take him out. What does sanctuary in a church mean? It means that traditionally in our society, what we call civilization, what we call our culture, someone could take sanctuary in a church from someone coming to do them harm or take military action against them, and that was respected. And we have a situation through the media's really mismanagement of Waco that you end up having 80 people murdered in a church, and the warrant never even got served, as I understand. something really wrong there, folks. Something really, really very wrong. But who is most at fault? Those of us who allowed that group to become marginalized in our minds. We bought the deception. That's what we need to change. We need to change. Whenever some group is out there being demonized, you ought to be going to the nth degree to figure out who's benefiting by this and why are we being told this and who is this group really. Thank you.
Well, I thought it was the nth degree. I think truth is absolutely essential for the continuation of our civilization. We live in a country that is founded on the principle that all men are created equal, i.e. a creator. That creator is by definition truth. And if we don't live by that, if we don't demand that our government, which is of and by and for the people, live by that, then we've given up. We don't deserve anything that we might have if we allow our governments to continue the way they're going. And when it comes to the military and warfare, as I've said before, the greatest virus in human consciousness today is that combination of greed and lust for power. And there is no event that produces more financial profits than warfare. And these people are so sociopathic that they could care less how many people get killed, maimed, and all their property destroyed in warfares that they plan. I've mentioned this a number of times before, I had a fellow in the CIA, something like 27 years, a friend years ago, tell me in 1974 that all wars, famines, and pestilences are planned events. There are no stupidities in diplomacy and then they have a war. They're brilliant to make us think they're stupid. There are no natural pestilences like AIDS. AIDS was, I can give you the patent number for the cure for AIDS that was taken out by the same people who got the patent number for AIDS. Just go to the CIA. That's where you can find the people who are principally behind that laboratory up in Connecticut. We need to, again, our founding fathers were spiritually advanced people. And Yuri Bezmenov made it very clear, a defector from the KGB who was principally involved in India and trying to convert India to communism. He made it very clear that where a people have a firm belief in God, you can never convert them to communism. And it's the same people who are converting all these other nations to communism that are working still. It's the same group of people from descendant down to descendant working to destroy this nation. And the most effective thing they have going right now is division. Do you call yourself left or right? Then you're an idiot. These issues are insignificant compared to what's happening to this country. All of these issues, being angry because Trump got in or supporting Hillary or whatever, these are divisive issues. And we have an elected president, support him, wait the 4 or 8 years, and then support the next guy. Once he's in, he's our president. And we have to make this government work. And we have to stand up for it and make it live the principles that it was founded on. And those are spiritual principles. Mark Passio, who was so involved in Satanism and got out of that, did so because he realized it was in complete violation of the fundamental laws of morality of the universe. These are spiritual laws. You know, I've mentioned before that the most successful civilization that I've ever read about was ancient Egypt from 8500 to 3500 BC. 5,000 years of peace and prosperity until immigration destroyed them, revolution. But they had principles like always speak the truth to everyone was a law of the country. Always treat everyone in a kindly manner was a national law of the country. They lived by these things. They had great peace and prosperity. They lasted for 5,000 years. Are we going to last for 500? It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it. Now, we have wonderful principles in our Constitution, but we have to also go back and realize what those principles are founded on. And truth is fundamental, because that is one of the definitions of the Creator, is truth and life and love and spirit and soul and so forth. And we need to see these principles as being primary in everything we demand of our governments. And when it comes to the news media, yes, they have an absolute definite mandate to be truthful and honest, because that's what they're there for, is to deliver the news, not the lies, not the manipulations, not the control. And I am disgusted with the news media in the United States. I don't feel a part of that at all. I'm losing my sense of loving this country. I love this country and its people, but its people are sheep falling asleep. And if we allow it to go down the drain, then so be it. Maybe there's another country that's better. You know, our news media doesn't even cover the fact that Putin is a devout fundamentalist Christian promoting Christianity in Russia. Y'all know that? Well, our news media is not going to say that, because our news media lies all the time. And we have to have truth if we're going to make it through to the next generation and the one after that. Truth is fundamental.
I'm not as cynical as Ken is about the media and the rest of that, but well, I am cynical about the media, very. But I guess what I want to say is, like, you know, one of the questions, like, when I hear some of these massive things the government does, where they do these massive operations that are just, you know, lies on a huge scale, you know, the question is, well, what can I do about it? And I guess what I do is go back to that movie A Bug's Life, where it's the grasshoppers, I guess they're saying, you know, well, if these bugs ever, these ants ever get the idea that we're screwed up and they all rise up against us, we're done. Well, my point is that we're not going to get any hero on a white horse riding in to save us. It's not going to happen. I mean, we elected a president that's not part of the establishment, but he seems to be getting pretty overwhelmed by the establishment. So the only answer that's going to work is, since this is a nation that's supposedly of, by, and for the people, is for each of us individual ants to, as courageously as we can, stand up and bite the monster as hard as we can. And that means that each one of us has something to do. Don't think that just because you're just an average citizen somewhere that you can't do anything. I mean, I'm personally dealing with the IRS right now, and I've got a chance to take a big bite out of them. Of course, I could lose too, but that's okay. You know, it's just it's the risk you take. You have to stand up and do something, and that means that you have to not compromise. You know, I believe the devil uses the 99% rule. He'll give you 99% of the truth 99% of the time, but when that key moment comes, he's going to pull out his 1%. You're going to find, you know, people that you agree with, you know, 99% of the time, and then there's going to be some point where all of those people say the same god-awful thing, and you think, wow, you know, he's right most of the time. Maybe I should do what he says. Well, don't, okay? Because that's the way the devil works. He'll lead you down the road and give you 99% of what you want, and then when that 1% comes in, he'll stab you in the back. So my point is, you know, look at your life, the things that you're connected to and that you affect, and figure out, however little it is, whatever you can do to stand up for the truth and not back down from evil. And sometimes that's not easy, but you have to do it.
I guess I'm the last one standing, so I want to thank our speaker. I think he did a great job here tonight. Got us all thinking. That's 90% of it.
Yeah, I just,
You'll get to talk. Anyway, I get to say something, but I heard someone talk about experts here. To me, there's a definition of an expert as anybody from out of town. It's something to think about. But they always fly in an expert, if you ever notice, and anybody from out of town. But it's just a little definition I kind of remember. Tonight's discussion was a lot about the media. I'm from Chicago originally, and at one point they wanted to merge the media, and this is several years ago, and they were talking about further mergers of the media, and they were discussing this in a forum, and this guy stood up with a quart of milk in his hand, and he said, homogenization works for milk, it doesn't work for news. So he was trying to make his point, which he did. But the point I'm getting at is this, is that we've consolidated media so much that there are just certain news bureaus, and there's only certain news. If you notice, when you watch the news, it's all the same. Every channel is the same. It's the same, different people, but the same news, because it's all from the same news channels. And newspapers can't compete with that because they're more local. So I remember in Chicago we had four newspapers: Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, Herald American. There was a fourth one, and they had a news bureau that they all hired to get all the local news. Well, they would use that news bureau for local news. All four newspapers did. Well, eventually they consolidated 2 newspapers. They got rid of the news bureau. So it's gone. So there's no local news. And so this is what's happened, and it's not a good thing. So consolidation doesn't work for news. I'm just trying to make that point. And we need to do something about that if we can. Money dictates a lot of things, and money dictates our Congress. We know that. We have the best Congress money can buy. And money dictates a lot of things that go on in this country. So we have to get over that. We have to get through it somehow. And my view is, well, it's kind of off the wall, but I think that Congress would vote to have free airtime the last 90 days of a general election. And if you did that, you could shorten the work. You could put get the onus back to the people. In other words, the Congress would represent the people instead of representing the people buying their vote in Washington. If that were the case, then you could put tariffs on corporations, get jobs back here, you could shorten the workday, you could do a lot of things, and you could have a better society, a better life. That to me is where the direction we need to go in, and that's about all I got to say about it. Anyway, our speaker gets to comment and close this meeting.
Okay, this just came in from Washington, D.C. No joke. My brother, who works for Homeland Security, finally is watching the talk I gave about a month ago, whatever happened to Lieutenant Colombo. He apparently didn't like what Tom wrote there at the start. He says, "I'm watching it. You're not a journalist. Do not ever call yourself a journalist. You have no real background in the press, especially at credible sources." Okay. He worked for the Chicago Tribune for a number of years, by the way. He was a photographer. My brother and I have always been at odds with each other. I love him, but, he allowed the ATF to come in and take his film out of his camera the first night ATF was in Waco. He was covering a basketball game for East Texas State, where he was going to college at the time. And on Saturday night, the ATF came in there, interrupted the game, threw the players out. All the people had to leave, and he was down on the sidelines taking pictures for the newspaper, the East Texan, which is the Commerce, East Texas student newspaper. Well, they took his film and threw it down and overexposed it, I mean, you have a First Amendment right, if you're in the press, to refuse to give them that film. They cannot take your film away if you film something. But getting back to what you guys are talking about, the media, and you all expect them to tell you the truth. And I said, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that they have to. There's no law in the books that says they have to tell you anything. You know, you buy garbage, they're going to sell you garbage. You want the truth, stop buying the garbage. Guys, that's on you. The other thing you can do is what I said before, use your phone. Today I get up and I watch the internet and I see a cop in California shot some guy with long hair. He looked like he was strung out on drugs or maybe a wino. It happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight. He shot him 7 times. The guy was unarmed. They were scuffling in front of the patrol car. Did y'all see that? And he's a young man. I'd say he's in his early 20s, but he had real long hair. It was in Redondo Beach, actually, or Huntington Beach. And the cop says, he shoots him the first time, he says, get down, right after he shot him. And somebody's filming it with their phone is the only way we know about this. But he goes, he shoots him, bang, and says, and he's shooting from here to where Hank is, right? He says, it's just like that. He hit him, and the guy kind of flinches, and he didn't fall. He says, get down, and then he shoots him again. He says, get down. Shot him 7 times, and every time he said, get down. And the guy finally collapses against the store there. But this stuff is not going to get reported by the media. They don't owe you anything. They're not, I mean, what else can we do? We can start. My brother, the one that just sent me that, I didn't want to be in the media. Yeah, I was in the media just as much as he was. I wrote columns that were published in the London Times, the Seattle paper, what do they call it, the Intelligencer. My stuff was published in the Spotlight, which I realized that's a racist organization or whatever. But anytime you report and your stuff is published or broadcast and you get paid for it, technically you're a journalist. So yeah, I was. I didn't want to be, but I was. He doesn't like it. Screw him. You know? I mean, we need to take the attitude, these people, the media, whoever they are, don't buy their garbage. If it's not truth, it's garbage, right? How do you do that? You guys don't watch garbage. I know everybody in there now. I've seen you over and over. I'm pretty sure most all of y'all have the good sense not to trust what CNN says every time and go check it out at the very least. But what about all your neighbors and your relatives, your own children? I'm trying real hard to get my own children to start examining things that they see on television a little more closely. So that's what we can do. All right?
Well, that's it for tonight. They're going to kick us out of here at 10:30. Our speaker is welcome to stick around and talk to people, and see you next week. And thank you again.
10:30?
It's almost 9.
Almost.
Well, yeah, an hour and 30.